Every inquiring mind wants to know why. Why would Bryan Kohberger do this? The way that we have been convicting Kohberger is absolutely appalling and disgusting. We don't know when and how this DNA got there. I'm not at all worried about the DNA. It's absolutely disgusting. This guy does not have a presumption of innocence. He has the assumption of guilt. I'm Sara Azari. I'm a criminal trial attorney in Los Angeles. I'm currently a legal analyst for News Nation, and I am the host of the Presumption podcast. You know, pretrial convictions of high-profile defendants in high-profile cases is nothing new, but Kohberger is a whole other level, and I think not only we found him guilty of slaying the 4 Idaho students, but we've decided that he's going to get the death penalty. We don't know when and how this DNA got there. So if Bryan Kohberger is person A and he touches this knife sheath, and then somehow this knife sheath is picked up by somebody else. I mean, he could touch it, he could handle it, it could be anything. And then that person then somehow is in this Kings Road home. That is a perfect explanation of how Kohberger's DNA was on that knife sheath. Is insufficient to place him in that home, let alone to place the murder weapon in his hands. That's why I'm not at all worried about the DNA. We've been saying it was off, his phone was off. We don't know if it was off. It could have been off, it could have been in airplane mode, or it could have just simply not picked up signal during that time. What's odd, of course, and what's problematic for the defense is that his phone did pick up signal before the murders and after the murders. The car's driving around, but then suddenly during the window of the murders, we don't know where this car was. We don't know where it was parked. We just know nothing about the car. Identification of the Hyundai Elantra as like the suspect vehicle, that's a problem. And then we have Dylan, the surviving roommate, and she's so afraid that she goes back in her bedroom and locks herself up and then doesn't call 911 for 8 hours later. Okay, that is highly unusual. We look to expected behavior, expected response, reasonable response. That is what makes sense to jurors. Jurors are normal people. So you tell them a story, it better make sense, right? And it doesn't make sense. The fact that this Kings Road house was a party house is a huge big deal because it expands the universe of suspects. Who was there at the time of the murders? What was their connection to the victims? Who had access to this home before? Did they have possible motive to kill? For months, we've been calling this a party house. This is a party venue. Motive is not an element of crime or murder, but of course, every inquiring mind wants to know why. Why would Bryan Kohberger do this to 4 innocent victims, college students? Could the state go to trial without motive? Absolutely, but I bet they won't. And the problem here is that we don't even have a connection to these victims. Forget about motive. To have a full defense, he absolutely needs to know that this investigation against him was 100% according to protocol. When you're talking about a defendant's right to a fair trial and his due process and his 6th Amendment to have a full defense, he absolutely needs to know that this investigation against him was 100% according to protocol and that there was integrity in this investigation. Kohberger's alibi is that he wasn't at the crime scene, but instead he was driving around alone. That statement of his alibi doesn't tell us obviously exactly what time he was driving, where he was driving to and from, and why. I mean, we don't have any of those details. He's not saying something that's completely inconsistent with the evidence.